you're fucking around. It's Wild Style Radio. Wild Style Radio.
Stand up and shout!
What is up? And welcome to the Stand Up and Shout Rock Show. Woo! Woo, woo, woo. Coming to you live Thursday night from the Salisbury Center in Manassas, Virginia.
Yes, sir.
As part of the Wild Style Network, fueled by Monster Energy.
Right on, right on.
What's up, dude?
I tell you, man, it has been a hell of a 2-week, not even a 2-week ride, but a 1-week ride.
No doubt.
Since we last talked. The last time that we talked, we had the Evics in here.
Yep.
And that turned into a long conversation. Tonight, I feel like there's so much to talk about. I hope we remember it all.
That might be the problem. And it all kind of started dropping on Friday night.
Right.
When we were...
Friday the 13th.
Yes, Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
When we were out at Buck Cherry.
We're at Buck Cherry.
Which was, yet again, just a phenomenal show.
Sure, Charlestown.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th. So, Kevin, I did this for you. You don't know that I did this. Because this
Okay.
is part of one of the things that I was thinking about. I was thinking about choices. Because we live in a great area in Washington, D.C. and the Northern Virginia area because there's a lot of acts that come through here, and they can come through in bursts. So last week was one of those weeks that we could have gone to a show literally 5 nights in a row. And so then you get choices, right? Like,
Sure.
We have a job outside of this one. We have limited finances either way.
All the time.
All the time. You have different locations, and there's all kinds of reasons why people choose what they choose and when they choose it. So I made a game for you. I made just a quick would you rather for a week in September.
Oh,
and
sweet.
then John and Mr. Salisbury may want to weigh on this too, because these are the shows that came through in the last 5 days and the choices that we had to make. And I think we can talk about Buck Cherry and that
Okay.
because that is one of the choices.
We made that choice.
And we made that choice, exactly. So
Okay.
the first would you rather that we have. So, and this is a would you rather that fell on the same night. And this is interesting, I think, for you. So I'm putting it to you. On the same night, we had Alice Cooper and Rob Zombie playing. I think it was
Okay.
a little more than a week ago. It was on a Wednesday night.
Yeah, it was last
We're here on
Tuesday.
a Thursday. Oh, it was a Tuesday night. Okay, so there you go. So out of those two, it was at Jiffy Lube Pavilion, which is close to us. Couple $100. I think obviously it's the same ticket, so the prices are going to kind of outweigh one another. The location's going to outweigh one another. So in that way, it's a good sample to start with. Out of those two acts, who would you prefer to see? It's a great double bill.
It would have been a great show to be at.
We both missed it.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to make the choice of hockey or rock and roll.
Well, that was a whole nother would you rather.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So so I have to pick one of the two acts.
One of the two.
or a couple
Who would you
$100.
rather see? the money's not a part of it.
Okay. Well, I've seen Alice Cooper a ton of times.
Yeah, you have.
And it's always a phenomenal show.
Yeah.
And I would always jump at that.
Uh-huh.
But I haven't seen Rob Zombie quite as much.
Uh-huh.
So I would probably say Rob.
Yeah.
Now, if John 5 was still playing
With Rob
him,
Zombie.
then that's a slam dunk.
All right. But in this case, he was not.
Right?
Right. So you're still sticking with Rob Zombie.
I would say Rob Zombie.
What about you guys out there?
Definitely Alice Cooper for the opposite reason with Kevin. Because I've seen Zombie more than
Really?
I
I
don't
didn't
think
know
I've
that.
ever seen Alice Cooper.
Really?
Maybe one time.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I know that you've seen Rob Zombie, but I didn't know that you have seen him more than Alice Cooper.
Yeah, I've seen him 3 or 4 times, but
All right.
Alice, I don't recall ever seeing him.
All right. All right. So, in choices right now, you guys are bringing up frequency of choice. How many times you have seen an act?
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen him, you're going to be inclined to go see somebody you haven't seen before.
And Alice doesn't have much longer.
That's true, too.
Getting older.
Longevity. Yep. Another good point. John, you have a preference in this? You have a horse in this race?
I'd probably just go Rob Zombie because I really don't have any desire to see Alice Cooper.
So, Alice Cooper's an older
Sorry,
show.
guys.
I've seen Alice Cooper a lot, John, so I'm going to defend Alice Cooper on this one. It's a hell of a theatrical show.
Yeah.
Like, if you never knew an Alice Cooper song, you'd still be kind of transfixed to the stage because there's so much happening on each and every song. So I'll just say, and I think that that's true of Rob Zombie also.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Alice was the original. All right. Well, that's kind of an easy one. But now we're going to mix up venues. So, Kevin, I had a feeling you were going to say Rob Zombie, and I guessed right. So now I just gave you 2 different acts on 2 different days at 2 different venues at 2 different prices. So you got Rob Zombie at Jiffy Lube for a couple $100. You had to pick one, or Buck Cherry at Charlestown, which is farther away. It's a farther drive, for $60.
Oh, I'm looking at a bunch of different slides. So it's Buck Cherry,
Yeah.
or Rob Zombie.
Buck Cherry, Rob Zombie, different venues at different prices.
Well, it would be Buck Cherry.
Because it's cheaper?
No, because it's a great show.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up spending a couple $100 extra at Charlestown anyway. So it's all about the same.
That money was a wash?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would have been a wash, money-wise.
So getting to the Buck Cherry show that we saw, because obviously you and I picked both. But, what were your reflections on that show?
Well, they always put on a great show. I mean, the energy of the band is phenomenal. Josh Todd is just a great frontman.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's completely underrated as a frontman.
Yeah.
So that's always entertaining. The guitar player,
Stevie?
Stevie is amazing.
Yeah.
Puts on a great show too. And, when we went to see Extreme and Living Color there, that was the first time I've been to Charlestown.
Sure.
And so definitely knowing that it was a general admission show,
Yeah.
wasn't sure what to expect.
Yeah.
And, there wasn't quite the crowd there.
It was a nice general admission crowd, too.
Yeah.
Like kind of a, we talked about that, like how general admission crowds can be evil.
Right.
This was not an evil general admission crowd.
No, and it wasn't even the floor was only maybe a third full,
Right.
I would say, crammed in there. Relative to the amount of people that were at Extreme, even with reserved seating,
Uh-huh.
I don't think it was anywhere near the number of people that came to see Extreme.
Yeah.
So it was pretty intimate,
Yeah.
hopefully, for 2 different reasons, when we go back there next month,
Uh-huh.
I hope it's that same amount of crowd too, because then we can get up close to the stage.
Exactly.
But I would like to see that
That would be for Dirty Honey.
for Dirty Honey.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'd like to
absolutely.
see that packed too.
Uh-huh.
But then, they had the bar inside the venue.
Uh-huh.
So you didn't have to leave
Absolutely.
unless you had to, use the facilities.
Yeah.
So there were some benefits to that show.
Did the night have a bearing on this? Because Buck Cherry was on Friday night, Rob Zombie was on a Tuesday night, as you pointed out earlier.
Well, if they were on different nights, then you could do both.
You could do both, but we had to choose one. I
Right.
didn't know if that had because we all have to go to school the next morning. You got to wake up early.
We do.
Unless it's a Saturday, you don't have to go to school that next day.
Yeah, no, I would probably pick Buck Cherry
Okay.
over Rob Zombie in any of those scenarios.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, I picked Buck Cherry on that one. You guys have thoughts on that? Mr. Salisbury? John?
Again, similar reasons because I've seen Rob Zombie more than I've seen Buck Cherry.
Going with frequency again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I like smaller venues also.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd probably be going to a Buck Cherry since I saw Rob Zombie, I guess, the slide before. I'll take the other one for this one.
This is all unanimous. And it's all, by the way, on the same week. I want to remind everybody of that. This was the choices that we had to make in the shows that we went to see. All right, I'm going to make a left turn here to 2 shows that we did not see, at least that you did not see. I'll backtrack on that one. I saw
Right.
one of these. We'll go into the alt-rock field because we had 2 alt-rock acts, one major, one kind of minor. We had PJ Harvey at the Anthem, which is a smaller venue here in Washington, D.C., for $60, general admission, or Pearl Jam at CFG Bank Arena in Baltimore, which is several hours away, on a Thursday night, I believe that
It's
was.
both the same night.
They both were the same night, so
Yeah.
that's a wash. Thursday night doesn't matter.
Yep.
You're going to pay several hundred to see Pearl Jam.
For sure.
Yeah.
So this might be a frequency selection.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, Baltimore's got great venues,
Uh-huh.
but from where we're generally at, it's fucking haul to get out there.
Absolutely. It's wicked.
So that would certainly play into that decision. But I've never seen PJ Harvey live.
Uh-huh.
And hearkening back to the WUVT radio days.
I know, yeah.
Played a lot of her stuff. So would have been a good show to see.
Sure.
Yeah. So I probably would have picked PJ Harvey.
I did pick PJ Harvey, and it was a great show to see. And it was a great bang for the buck. I thought, for the $60, it was fantastic. Now,
Was it crowded?
It was about 3/4 full.
Okay.
So it was more crowded than I was expecting. I actually didn't go general admission. I upped the charge on that one and
Okay.
paid double and got the super excellent seats because
Well,
I can get
that's,
bougie like
that's certainly great at the anthem.
that. Exactly. But yeah, it was a good set list. There's a new album out. PJ Harvey has a new album out, so
Okay.
it was mixed with newer music all the way back to stuff that you're bringing up, Down by the Water,
Right.
in the '90s. And you know, she hasn't lost her touch on anything, but I don't think the Pearl Jam necessarily has either.
No.
Yeah. So I don't know. You guys have a preference? You know who PJ Harvey is?
I'd love to see a Pearl Jam. I just would not want to go drive to Baltimore.
Yeah.
Like if it was closer all day, but I just have no desire to go out there.
Pearl Jam never to me sets like a pattern tour. And this tour is like that too, right? They're in Europe for a little bit, then they jump back over to North America for a little bit, and then they jump back out again. And I wish they followed a cadence in their touring so that you wouldn't be just stuck, like forced to possibly see them in Baltimore.
Well, I mean, and I guess not that they've done a lot of touring recently, but like Iron Maiden, who has been in this general area the last couple times, and they're coming up next, I think it's next month, and they're in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So they've been at Capital One Arena, and we
Right.
saw them at Jiffy Lube
Right.
the year before that, or 2 years before that. So
Right.
I don't know if it was timing and venue availability, or they just were like, hey,
Right.
we've been to DC a couple of times recently, so now we're going to Baltimore.
Right. Yeah. Jeff Salisbury, I thought you were about to speak there.
Yeah, if that number at the bottom is what they'd pay me to go to the show, I would go to Pearl Jam.
So does that mean
They have to pay me to go to either one of those shows.
Wait, are the Evics back here?
You know that's the rule. You just violated the ultimate would you rather rule.
What's that?
You're not allowed to wash would you rather. That's, you know what I mean?
Oh.
Like if it's a Sophie's choice, you still got to make the choice.
Probably PJ Harvey then, just because it's closer. Yeah.
Like you went with the geography on that one.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that you also like honed up and manned up to the old school would you rather rules.
I guess I have to stick to the rules, but definitely they'd have to pay me to go to that one for real. I hate both of them.
Well, I get the last one we're going to end because this was about to happen. One of these shows did not actually happen. It was going to happen on the Sunday of the week. That was Megadeth at the Virginia Credit Union live in Richmond. And I believe, Kevin, you had free tickets lined up for that one, although that wouldn't have been the cost for most people.
Were they free?
I think that Mr. Salisbury is going to connect you with something like that, right? Like, didn't you have some freebies on that one, Jeff, or something? Did I see that in the text?
No, we were going if he wanted to go, but I didn't have freebies. I had freebies, but he didn't have an extra freebie.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Mine would have been free.
Yeah. So they would have been like, what would
$100 tickets.
All right, that's not bad at all.
Yeah, because there's VIP and all that sort of stuff. Getting back to meet the band would have been free.
So there you go. You give it a VIP clause to add in as a second or a third bullet to the Megadeth list versus Alice Cooper. And I know I just know how much of an Alice Cooper fan you are. So I feel like that would have been a harder choice for you, Kevin, instead of Rob Zombie against Megadeth.
Yeah, but I'm a huge Megadeth fan too, so I would think 10 times out of 10 times I would be choosing Megadeth
I would
over
think
Alice
that
Cooper.
too. I thought that might have been also a gimme, for you in this one too. But I just tried to make it as hard as I could.
And I had some timing issues too, so at least selfishly for me, the fact they canceled it
Yes.
made me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, you were torn. Where were you on this one, Lou? I take it you're going to pick Megadeth also, since you had that VIP lineup.
Yeah, I mean, because I was planning to go to that, then obviously that's the choice. But just given those choices, I think that would have been tough because, again, the same reason I've seen Megadeth, I haven't seen Alice Cooper.
Right.
And I'd like to see him before it's too late.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, cool. So, I mean, in reflecting on all of this, that's the wonderful quandary that we had in front of us. We had so many shows, so little resources, and so little time. We have to budget as best we can between Megadeth, Alice Cooper, Rob Zombie, Pearl Jam, PJ Harvey, Buck Cherry, and Rob Zombie.
Well, and that is coming up again because of all the other news that has come out today.
Absolutely. So then there was today. Then we woke up this morning.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just excited.
Oh no, totally excited. I mean, obviously, hopefully, folks have heard that Metallica has announced that they're touring again this summer.
You got the shirt, buddy.
I do have the shirt.
I was wondering.
And it's been forever rumored. And I'll just say, when I saw the text, you know, I know you guys were firing off the text, but I got like 20 of them. Not to mention the Virginia Tech Athletics, because I'm on that email account. So
yeah, exactly.
I woke up to those in my email box too. But
Sure.
you know, the rumor has been forever, you know, because of Enter Sandman, and Virginia Tech's been using that.
And I don't think that people understand that. Like, I unless I know otherwise, I don't think of another university that picked up on Enter Sandman and using Virginia Tech using Virginia Tech using Metallica so strongly as an opening song and affiliated with the football team and the university. They really embrace it, and they embraced it first. I feel like other people have done it since because they've seen the power of it.
Sure.
But
yeah.
Virginia Tech took the lead in that.
They certainly took the lead in it. It was I think 2001. So it was right after Michael Vick left and went to the NFL.
Right.
You know, they started doing this, and it's really just become the tradition of the school now. They use it for the basketball team too. But, you know, the rumor was, and Metallica has, you know, they've had a financial relationship with the university too in terms of the merchandising, you know, this and they just re-upped that
New
recently.
shirts that came out this fall. Then they look fantastic.
Yeah, they're good stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, the rumor was that sooner or later, Metallica was going to come to Virginia Tech and perform Enter Sandman live for a football game.
Thursday nights, like specifically.
Yeah.
That's always been the dream.
Well, and they played, if you remember, I think it was 2018 or 2019, they played Tennessee at Bristol Motor Speedway.
Yep.
And that was when it really kind of started to ramp up, that they were going to be there for that night game and do it. That didn't happen, but they've even shot video clips that they show prior to the team coming out to Enter Sandman on the field. But never would I've ever expected that they're actually going to go to Lane Stadium and play a concert.
Right.
So it's interesting, and I can't wait to see the reaction of a lot of these Virginia Tech fans and students that go for one song, and then they start rolling out Seek and Destroy and Whiplash and everything else, and how they're going to react to that. They'll be like, oh. So, but yeah, it's going to be awesome.
They have to close with Enter Sandman at the university.
I would think so, but could you imagine if they started with it?
And then the college kids would all leave?
Well, you know, for the longest time, it was either Enter Sandman or Master of Puppets. And then after Stranger Things, they went back to closing with Master of Puppets.
Right.
So I could see it going either way.
Sure.
I mean, the last time because I saw them 4 or 5 times on the Black Album tour, and Enter Sandman was the first song they played.
Sure.
So.
Right. It's not beyond them.
I mean, you want to talk about amping that crowd up.
Right.
If they opened with that.
Right. And there would be the traditional
then everybody could leave.
Right. If the stadium was left standing, because the intensity that happens with the jumping in the stadium when the football team plays, is going to be like tenfold when Metallica's actually there.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And
it's nostalgic for us. I'll get personal on this one because we were there when the Black Album was released.
Yep.
So, and I know that we purchased it, or you either acquired it from the Virginia Tech radio station, or it was purchased from a record.
Oh no, we bought that shit.
Okay, I was gonna say I didn't know,
because that was the same night. That was released on the same night that Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 came out.
Okay, that's right. I forgot.
So
about
they
that.
did the midnight opening,
and we were in line
at Record Exchange.
Right,
we went and got all of that, and then I think it was a little slower rollout, but like within the next couple of weeks was Nevermind, 10, all of that stuff came out at about the same time.
But it was still fringe. It wasn't, I would say, in mass culture yet. Even though MTV was playing it, it still wasn't. I feel like you could, a number of years later, 4 to 5 years later, like walk by any frat house and hear Enter Sandman possibly. But it wasn't then.
Oh, yeah.
Not at first.
No. You were that was obviously the album that broke them to the masses.
Like we were the music nerds and metalheads that
Right.
were, the ones in line at that door, like waiting for the release date, along with, dozens of others.
Right.
But there's thousands of kids at Virginia Tech, 28,000 probably
Right.
back then. There was not 28,000 in line just for those albums.
Absolutely not. It wasn't like, in our freshman year when we'd walk across campus and out of every window you were hearing Sweet Child of Mine.
Yes.
A year and a half after
Right.
Appetite for Destruction came out.
Absolutely right.
So,
Right.
yes, it was a little bit further down the road before that was
Right.
mass culture.
But if you would have told me on that day that Metallica was going to not only play at Virginia Tech, but play at Lane Stadium, like there's no way I ever would have believed any of those words.
Well, yeah, because I don't think the entire time we were there was even a concert in that stadium.
No, it was, in Burris Hall, and smaller acts. We saw, like, for example, Living Color.
Yeah, and Kicks.
And yes, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, it's exciting.
It is. And it's a part of, obviously a tour announcement from Metallica that we're excited about, too. Although they're not, the Lane Stadium Blacksburg date is not in their official tour lineup dates, but they still have a coinciding leg of this tour.
Right.
That is going to be in the D.C. area. Happens to include a stop in the D.C.
May
area
28th, they're going to be at what's now Northwest Stadium. It used to be FedEx Field. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's been a while since they've come through the D.C. area, too.
Right.
So, and actually going back to the Baltimore thing, that's where we saw them the last time.
Right. Yes, that's true.
Was at M&T Stadium in Baltimore.
It was a fantastic show.
Yep.
Yeah, Hardwired.
That was
a Hardwired tour.
That was, so it's going to be 8 years.
Yeah.
From when we.
Wow, is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
That's tough. All right, before we have other, like, all other kind of news topics to get to, but before that we've been talking rock docs.
Yep.
To change gears, and we want to just mention a great rock doc that happened to be released a few days ago.
Yep.
Kevin and I were so excited about it. Like, we were diving in on day one on the release of Nothing But a Good Time on Paramount Plus.
Yep.
To catch it as soon as possible. So
we could talk about it tonight.
Exactly. I feel like we've talked about so many rock docs this year, like more than ever. Definitely more than last year. More seem to keep coming out, and to me, they keep coming out on Paramount Plus, who has the affiliation with MTV.
Correct. Yeah.
And this is their version. So
it was it was great. We've talked a little bit about it in the lead up, and I was really excited to watch it, and it was great. And it's 3 episodes, and it kind of covers
3 episodes, and I feel it was very efficient. I read the book. The book is huge.
Right.
I mean, it's a meaty book. I have it in hardcover. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I don't know what the last page was. 400 to 500 pages, and that includes some Mark Weiss photography. So there's great, photography in the center, but it's really a lot of documented stories from a lot of different musicians, not just those that they showed in the documentary. But I thought it told the story of the book in the time frame that it had, which was only a couple hours over those 3 episodes, very efficiently.
Yeah, it was. Basically, it focused primarily on the L.A., the Sunset Strip, and the bands that came out of L.A. It did, and we've got a little bit of the trailer up. Mm-hmm. I was surprised, even in this preview, there's a couple clips where we see Brian Forsyth, but Kix
was great. He was a great interview.
That was awesome.
Surprised. I was stunned to see him in that. So that was, to me, like, if we were going to reflect on moments in this, most surprising moment. And I loved it at the end when, because he kind of wrapped up later, which is kind of interesting because Kix was around in the early 80s.
Oh, yeah.
They got to more prominence in the later 80s. But they were kind of, they kind of went through time phases right between the 3 episodes. So you had the early 80s, the mid 80s, and then the later 80s. And they mentioned Kix in the later part of the 80s. And I loved his face because they're talking about the decline of glam metal by those years. And when they looked at him to, as, in terms of a recent resurgence, to say, did you ever you expect to find yourself playing in front of thousands of fans again? And the pause and the stunned look on his face. And then he just looked up with a simple, no.
that was good.
Great.
And, even when we interviewed him, he didn't speak a lot.
No.
So it was very cool to see him really kind of getting into more detail about his time and really the piece where they're talking about the addictions and
Yes.
the drug abuse
Crack.
and
Specifically him.
and that
He was so
hooked
funny.
on crack.
Yeah,
man.
we was talking about smoking crack. It was, yeah. I mean, it was. They're talking about the tragedy of those
correct. Yeah,
right, those issues with a lot of different musicians, but he somehow made that a lighter topic.
right.
Yeah,
So I thought
fantastic.
that was cool.
Brian Forsyth was fantastic. So
Yeah.
obviously we're Kicks people.
For sure.
So I was very excited when I saw that.
And I was
portion.
catching all the little nuggets and the Easter eggs that would pop up, like when they were talking about the GNR, the first show, when
Yeah.
they ended up getting signed
And the
at the
Kicks-
Troubadour,
and they had
and
the
Kicks
Kicks
open for
marquee.
them.
Yep.
I was like, oh, look at that.
And they
But,
also talked about that was, Kicks had Guns N' Roses as an opener and then Poison as an opener. And Brian Forsyth, spoke to that very briefly.
right.
Yeah.
But, for me, what I loved that they actually touched on and really delved into was talking about Hanoi Rocks.
Oh, I'm glad you
And-
brought that up too.
and,
you're
you know,
where I am on that. All of this.
Completely underrated band.
Yes.
But influenced so many of the later 80 trailing into the early 90s bands.
Yeah, and they really gave that acknowledgement to Guns N' Roses. How
Yeah.
much of an influence Hanoi Rocks was to Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was great, the Michael Monroe interview clips and him talking about that.
Sure.
And how, and breaking up still, and I don't know when that interview was recorded, but related to Razzle, and it was just like, we couldn't do it anymore.
Well, because that's the Hanoi Rocks story. Unfortunately, the Hanoi Rocks story is that Vince Neil killed the drummer, and that's tragic for Motley Crue.
Right.
And it was tragic for other people that was involved with that accident. But they forget the tragedy of losing Hanoi Rocks in that, and obviously not the tragedy of losing Razzle. I think that's acknowledged.
Sure.
But the band broke up, and it was a fantastic band. I think that they really did a good job communicating to me what I thought the best thing about the not only the series but the book is I feel like a lot of people who weren't alive in that time, and we were alive in that time, and we fell in love with glam rock, and a lot of people really discredit now glam rock pretty quickly, and really just kind of the guise of it's cheesy, and it's superficial, and it's not. There are parts of it that are cheesy and superficial, but there are parts of it that are very substantive and very good. And I think that it paints that picture very well, especially going back to the early years in the 80s.
Sure.
When they started with, I want to say progressive, but that's wrong. I mean,
New wave.
Skinny Ties. There we go. Yes,
Yeah.
the new wave music and the new wave music scene that was out. And, Motley Crue coming into the scene was like Nirvana coming into the scene and disrupting new wave,
Right.
which people thought the same thing, that it was cheesy and it was, overdone and cliche. And this was a whole different direction and a whole fresh breath. And glam rock was that for a long period of time.
Yeah, and then it got oversaturated, mostly because the record companies were trying to cookie cut
Yes.
and sign bands that look like this band or
And
that
happened.
band. And
Not to say that didn't happen. That
Oh, yeah.
happened. But it wasn't that way for a long time. And that's what that's what the surprise, another surprise guest that I really wound up liking. And when I first saw him, I'm like, what the hell is this? Was Corey Taylor from Slipknot. And I was like, why did they throw Corey Taylor into a documentary and have a documentary interview about glam metal with someone that's, really kind of associated more with nu metal, although he'd hate, to say that, but that's really kind of Slipknot, which is one of those genres that kind of comes back in bags on glam metal. And it turns out he's a huge fan. And I think of like, our kids or people that were younger that didn't kind of live the heyday of glam metal and how great it was. They kind of look through it through the lens of it sucks and it's superficial and it's stupid and all this other alt rock and everything else is better. But Corey Taylor was being one of those people that has benefited from the nu metal scene, goes back and tells you all of the reasons why he loved glam metal so much, and he gave it credibility. And I thought that was like one of the better, it turned into me like watching that and saying, what the hell is that all about? To like, this is the best thing about the documentary, like surprisingly. So kudos to Corey Taylor and Slipknot and, for coming out and really just kind of speaking to, I think that we do that, right? Like you love thrash metal. You came to love thrash metal after you've loved glam metal.
Yep.
I love grunge. I love alt rock, but I loved glam metal first, and I still do. And there's still a lot of glam metal that I still listen to regularly all the time. And I loved it at the end when Corey said, it did become stereotypical and superficial, and it needed a break and it needed a change. But then sometimes, that grunge was too depressing. It was too angry. It was too heavy. And sometimes you need to look at your girl, hold her hand and say, "You're hot as hell." And that's all you really want to say. And glam metal does the great job of saying it that way. And
Right.
Yeah, like you hit that nail like right on the head. Like it can't be about, the same emotion all the time over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah. So, it was, great several hours of watch. And if you
Really worth it. And we did
haven't
not
seen it,
we threw out some spoilers, but we didn't throw out all the spoilers. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of great stories,
absolutely.
fantastic stories that we're not talking about that are not only in the there's even more in the book, very obviously, because more
Sure.
was written in the book.
Well, yeah. So, check it out, and we want to hear what you guys think. So, hit us up on the socials and, let us know if we're on the mark, off the mark, or what you think.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely something I'm going to rewatch.
For
I will
sure.
say that. Like that is just another one. And and speaking of rewatching, the other part, like I got to make mention for this because you and I love this movie, Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, The Metal Years. They made a point to really showcase not only the movie but Penelope Spheres, who
Yep.
directed the movies. Like they really made a point to explain how like that really caught the vibe of the scene at the time, which of course when we watched that in the late 80s, we felt the same way.
Right.
And so it's just another great watch. So not only nothing but a good time, but if you go back and find Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, The Metal Years, it will be a good supplement to nothing but a good time.
And I watched it again
Oh,
a
did
week
ya?
or so ago after we talked about it when we were discussing the trailer leading into this. And because I'm like, God, it's been years since I watched that.
Right.
So
You remember what, like your boy Dave Mustaine, how he described glam? And this is another like of the negative stereotypes because he was speaking out as, remember Megadeth, them, gay LA metal, right? Like that was how he bent the acronym to
Right.
like knock on glam metal. But again, that is that stereotype that isn't necessarily accurate. So I think it's kind of
Sure.
funny that that movie captures that.
Right.
And you come back and see now in later times,
Or
there's
when,
a change
or when
in
he talked
attitude.
about, we try not to look like there's a truck blowing past us at
Yes.
80 miles an hour with our hair.
So we're also talking about this, and we mentioned Brian Forsyth and Kix on basically the year anniversary of when we saw the
That
Kix
is
final
right.
show.
Yeah. What was it? That was yesterday.
Yeah. And again, they talk about that at the end, a little bit of a resurgence that's happening with those bands and those groups, even right now today.
Right.
And of course, they went to the M3 Rock Festival, which obviously we've attended multiple times.
They didn't ask to interview us, though.
I know. Which I loved seeing that. And they were doing interviews at the M3
They
Rock
were.
Festival at some
Yep.
point this past year in preparation for this documentary. So that really surprised me too.
Yeah. Maybe they were the ones that put all those stickers up.
Right, you could find some stand up and shout show, rock show advertising at the M3 Rock Festival.
That is true.
Yeah, people found that.
For sure.
All right.
All right. So we got another game, at least the one I knew about.
So yeah, there's a lot of news and a lot of things that have happened. So, we like to get our wordsmithing out and try to sum our feelings about these news topics in one single word. So that's the goal in all of this. John, Jeff Salisbury, if you want to come up with words to get into these events, because these events are meaty, a lot's happened with them, feel free to throw a couple words at us. I'm sure you guys will come up with some good 4-letter words to kind of throw our way. But yeah, lots happened. So, and I feel like this in some of our news stories is probably now the oldest bit of news, even
Kinda
though
a
new
little
revelations keep coming out about it.
Yeah.
So, do you want to read it?
Yeah, I'll kick it off.
All right.
So the news of Dave Grohl's Love Child has Foo Fighters fans feeling blank.
Do you like that verbiage, love child, that I threw out there? I mean, I didn't invent that term by any means, but who knows if it actually is a love child?
Be a bastard.
yeah, you could have thrown that word out. Now, I went on
Love Child works.
I'm a little softer, so I'm gonna use a Foo Fighter line and say I'm a little divided, and so he's a little divided. I think that it's interesting to see the reaction on all of this, and we could probably get into like a Jess style conversation because this
Certainly could.
get it very gossipy very quickly. I read a Loudwire article today that really kind of furthered this along and followed it along. I don't know if you caught the same one, but it's about fans and how that's why my word is divided, judge artists on some of their personal behavior, especially their personal romantic behavior, not even necessarily as a sexual behavior, but how they're engaged in a relationship. So if you don't know, Dave Grohl announced himself in an Instagram post that I'll quote it, "I plan to be a loving and supporting parent." Wait a minute, hold on a second. I don't have the quote. I thought I did. Yes, that was it. "I plan to be a loving and supporting parent to her," the announcement of his new baby daughter. "I love my wife and my children. I am doing everything I can to regain their trust and earn their forgiveness. We're grateful for your consideration towards all children involved as we've moved forward together." So he came out. This wasn't broken or leaked somewhere. It could have possibly been, and maybe Dave jumped in front of it. I don't know. But he did acknowledge that he had an extramarital affair. And from that, he has what we've deemed as a love child. It will be a daughter with the woman who hasn't necessarily, they've been very good at keeping that information private. But getting back to that Loudwire article, in terms of fan reactions to news like this, they brought out a psychological term, and they call this parasocial relationships in psychological, I guess, terminology. And parasocial relationships are one-sided, where one person extends emotional energy, interest, and time to the other party, their persona, and the other person is completely aware of the other's existence. So in other words, how does Dave know us and what we know about him and what we think, and should he even care? And that's, I think, the really kind of the simple way to put that parasocial relationship kind of piece out there. That's where I go with my word that just blanked away, of divided, where people can become judgmental about this. And Dave, as the good guy of rock and roll, doesn't look like the good guy in some people's eyes.
So I think divided is a good word. Mine was joking. Because it's true.
Joking.
Most of the things that I've read are either one way, where I saw a ton of tweets where they said, "Oh, look, Dave gave the best of him."
Yes.
Or
yes.
said he should have started his announcement with, "Excuse me, I have a confession to make."
Yeah.
So, quoting Foo Fighters lyrics.
Yes.
In a joking manner.
I said a little divided. That's where we're going to that right away. Yeah.
Or some of them that I was seeing said, "I feel so betrayed. I can't believe he would do this. He was a good guy."
Yeah.
It's like, whatever.
Right. And that's what I see around me. I work and interact, not even necessarily just work, with a lot of people that view Dave Grohl as very saintly. And so the fact that he showed that he has another side has really,
that he's human.
Yes, exactly. That has really struck them hard, and they question, I guess, his integrity. I go back to Foo Fighters music. I don't really see. I think like their music is really kind of phenomenal, and what Dave Grohl has already gone through with Nirvana, and the suicide of Kurt Cobain, and coming out of it. And we just talked about this a little bit with Nothing But a Good Time, with grunge, and maybe you can call his music post-grunge, being a little bit angry, being depressed, and dwelling in those feelings. And to me, that could have been Foo Fighters, music. That could have been their songs, but it's not. It's very positive and uplifting. And so I think that's a really kind of surprising bend. It's almost glam metal-like in the approach to a lot of the songs that the Foo Fighters put out. So while he doesn't have maybe the effect of Buck Cherry and Josh Todd, and you might not be surprised to get this news from Josh Todd, as he sings about crazy bitches.
Oh yeah.
Like Dave Grohl's not that direct, but you also know that there's a human side to this. So I see
John's typing us a note.
John, yeah,
that's who's rumored to be the.
And that relationship, so Annalise Nielsen is, I guess she publishes a porn site in LA, or at least contributes to a porn site in LA. And I know of that rumor, John, where she has evidently had a relationship on and off with Dave Grohl for some time. So I'm looking down. I got some stats in front of me. His track record's not perfect. As Kevin mentioned, he's human. He's had his, ups and downs with relationships, as any person has had. To go back, you and Kevin and I, we were in high school. I think were we in English class together at some point? We probably had to read the Scarlet Letter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Like as like one of those, forced high school readings.
Yep.
But that was Hester Prynne, right, with the red letter A, and that's the whole point of the novel. Was Hester Prynne a sinful character or not?
Right.
And that's debated in the 1850s, based on a guest character from the 1600s. Yeah, so that's where Dave is. Should Dave wear the Scarlet Letter A?
Well, and, I was reading an article, I think that was or some quotes from People magazine, where everyone's like, oh my God, this must have floored his wife, blah, 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 blah. Apparently she knew.
Right.
So before this even broke, so
Jennifer Youngblood's his wife.
Yeah. So he told her.
Yes.
So it wasn't like he was hiding it and this suddenly came out in the news and gotcha.
Right.
Type thing, and these celebrities and the paparazzi and TMZ and everybody that's out trying to get the scoop and the story.
Yeah. I got a Vanity Fair, like the first line, the nicest guy in rock and roll has been dethroned. That's how they kicked off the article.
Okay. Well, yeah. So, and it's like the old adage, you never know what goes on behind closed doors. Right.
You can look at, Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, and kind of see their experiences, and which became public with how they approached their relationship, sometimes open, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to know. Like, I'll say that. I'm still going to say a Foo Fighters fan. Like, I'll just say that this bottom line and all this, no matter what.
Doesn't change.
I love Foo Fighters songs. I will go see them live, and I love Dave Grohl. So it doesn't, I don't, it's hard for me to get into a parasocial relationship with Dave Grohl.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, people make mistakes.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Jess will talk about this later. Maybe she already has.
Maybe you could hang around and bring it up on our show.
I'd be afraid. I'm out of my league. I'll just stick to the Foo Fighters songs. No, evidently, though, I know with his wife, Jennifer Youngblood, because you're bringing that up too, like in terms of having, I guess, maybe an out-of-the-box relationship or an imperfect relationship, there's been incidents of jealousy with Dave Grohl towards her over a tennis coach. I've heard that side of it. Again, I don't know how to verify these things, and I don't care. I just know what I want to go see when I go see a Foo Fighters show, and why I even went in the first place.
Yep.
So I get to that. So
none of that has any impact on what I'm listening to.
And maybe that way I'm not divided. I just see fans becoming divided over
True.
this, to get back to my word. And I'm going to love the Foo Fighters. So thank you, Dave Grohl, for all of you've done. You produce amazing music, and I'm always going to love you for it. All right. Okay, another big one. So as we were at Buck Cherry on Friday the 13th, Jane's Addiction was playing in Boston.
Yep.
And so I'm going to read this one to you. You can throw out your word. Perry Farrell's Friday the 13th punch was looking
soft.
You didn't appreciate that punch?
No. Like I said in the text messages we exchanged, he should have just slapped him with his purse because that's what it looked like. But, in all seriousness, that was that looked like a guy that is struggling with his addictions.
Again, we're going to get into parasocial relationships here because people are going to judge people, based on how they're behaving. And you're not going to look at addiction as an excuse, but just be how they're behaving and what they want that to translate to in terms of what they think a rock star and artist should be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and he admits it, and I'll let you give your word and speak to it. But it's wasn't good.
It was not good. Ultimately, there's that side of it too. So evidently, I've heard different. It's hard to really kind of know what really caused him to go into the rage that he went into. you just kind of hear, to me, the repercussions after the fact, and then of course rumor as to why he went in there. But to me, my word, I went the opposite direction. I went nuclear, and it was nuclear for me because I love Jane's Addiction.
Yep.
As much as I love the Foo Fighters, I also love Jane's Addiction. If you remember back to our show, we talked about Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees, and I still feel this way. If there was going to be one where we asked the question, if there was going to be one that you could put in and just bypass all the voting, all the selection process, who would it be? Mine was Jane's. It's always going to be Jane's because I think that they changed rock and roll in a way that Nirvana did. Nirvana gets that, and even Nothing But a Good Time. Getting back to that, they showed Nirvana clips ending glam metal. I really think that happened before, and in a lot of ways with Jane's Addiction, because while Jane's didn't have the commercial impact that Nirvana had with a broader audience, I feel like they had an artist impact. Like, I think they were out influencing artists and what would become then future alt-rock artists at the time in ways, as that would, because they were just really kind of there in an LA scene before Nirvana was, and before the Seattle scene was found.
Oh, they were way underground and stayed way underground.
Yes, yeah.
And until grunge started to break.
Right.
But they were building and festering this underground culture.
Yes.
And I would say that they were a lot more influential than some of the grunge bands.
Right.
So yeah, it was it pained me to see that because I knew what the next shoe was that was going to drop.
Right. Right.
And let's be honest, right? They've had this back and forth between him and him and Dave
all the way back to the early 90s. That's why they were. You saw that in another documentary we talked about, Lala, on Paramount Plus. With the Lollapalooza Festival, that was basically driven as a farewell because the members of Jane's Addiction could not get along and sustain more albums and more music together.
And they got back together, and they were supposed to be doing the tour. The most recent time I saw them, and right before the tour started, Dave Navarro reported that he had long COVID. And he wasn't going to tour with the band.
Right.
Although the band had been in the studio writing and recording.
Right.
My opinion is he just was like, I can't do this.
Right, right.
And
it did look suspect. You didn't necessarily fully buy the story that was just long-term COVID that was preventing him from touring with Jane's Addiction, which is why it was so exciting to see them, all four original members, including Eric Avery, get back together and try this again.
Right.
And it's terrible that it went to where it went.
But then even, like 3 shows after I saw them in DC, they canceled the tour because Perry's voice, he had issues with his voice.
So, and that's what I heard was an issue driving this time around.
And I read a couple articles, but the behavior, when he came out, he's just swigging the whole show through a bottle of wine or whatever it was, which, those that saw the Lollapalooza documentary saw he was doing that even in the interview sessions, when he did that. But the rumor was, I read someone who had, whether it was on Twitter or however it got out, but someone that had seen them like 3 or 4 shows before this Boston show said that he was having issues with his voice and they didn't know if it was related to the wine, whatever substance he was consuming on stage, but would get to points where in between songs, he's just rambling incoherently on and on and on. And the band appeared to be getting frustrated. And so Dave Navarro just started playing over him while he was rambling on and on. So to me, that's what spurred what happened on Friday. Was that he didn't like that he was once again being drowned out by, because they didn't want him to, they wanted to play music. They didn't want him to just blather on.
Jane songs are not easy songs to sing. And and singing's a physical act. And like a sport, as you get older, it just gets tougher and tougher to do.
For sure.
Father
Ask
Time's
Vince Neil.
undefeated. Yeah, right. We've seen this with a lot of acts. So I understand that frustration, but I hate to see Jane's Addiction end this way. And it really seems that this will be that we will never see Jane's Addiction tour again.
Well, I mean,
not in at least the original lineup.
The last tweet that Dave Navarro put out, which was just one word, good night.
Right.
Maybe that should be my word.
That's why I went with nuclear.
Yeah.
This was the nuclear option. That punch, you're right. It was a bitch slap. It wasn't much of a punch. In fact, when I first saw the video, I was like, that was a punch.
Right.
But it really was. It was the emotional impact of it, not the physical impact of it.
Right.
And I knew that was the end of Jane's, which I'm really, really going to miss seeing a great live act like them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Disappointing.
Yep. So that was, it's really kind of a dark week. Like when you're saying disappointing just now. I mean, I feel like we're weeding through sad news. Okay, on to the next one.
So if you want tickets to the Oasis reunion tour, you better blank.
You better finance. Because this gets back into our conversation about dynamic ticket pricing.
Yep.
And Oasis embraced it. And it's really interesting to me because Oasis hasn't played in a long time, obviously.
Sure.
Many, many years. And I don't know I'm not sure where the assumption came from that there was going to be this explosive of a reaction to going out and seeing Noel and Liam Gallagher play together again. But evidently the marketing geniuses at Ticketmaster figured out that was somehow there. And Oasis blames this on Ticketmaster, these decisions to go with these dynamic ticket pricing.
Okay.
Right? The quote is, it needs to be clear that Oasis leaves decisions on ticketing and pricing entirely to the promoters and management, and at no time had any awareness that dynamic ticket pricing was going to be used.
Bullshit.
Right? So Gene Simmons reacts. Did you read that?
I did not, no.
Of course. Somebody sits in a room, tries to figure out how far the rubber band can stretch, and if you're not selling tickets, guess what happens? The price go down. That's capitalism. If you don't want to pay that amount, don't go. So Gene is a fan. Gene is a fan of this in a big way.
Well, I'm sure he is because, I think he does use dollar signs in his signature.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
That would make sense.
So, I mean, I'm thinking of it from the fan experience, though. Like that, even with, I almost feel like what they're saying with dynamic ticket pricing really is scalping. And we decide that, right? At least that you have a chance at getting a ticket at a fair base price if you get it at a regular price, as opposed to, say, a scalper grabbing it and then they post it up later. Then you could think to yourself and say, well, I know the original ticket was this, so it's really not worth that for me to go. When it's dynamic ticket pricing, you don't know what the base is. And that's what I think is snarky about it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's parlaying over into other things too, right? Because, I'm a Caps season ticket holder.
Sure, right.
And they're using dynamic ticket pricing for different games. So if it's the Penguins coming to town, the tickets in every section is like 5 times more than when they play Montreal.
Right.
On a Tuesday night.
Right, sure.
Which is, for the fans that are trying to buy tickets.
You never had a chance to begin with.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I think is ugly about it. You never had a shot at a fairly priced ticket.
Right. And what's interesting, because the word has been, and I guess Ticketmaster must control some of the venues in England, in UK, because I heard they're wanting to investigate that there, where we've heard and read that a lot of people here in the US are going over to England, to France, to
it's cheaper to
other
travel
countries
that
it's cheaper to buy plane tickets and a hotel and get tickets to a show than what you're paying here in the States.
Right.
So, but it sounds like that's now maybe not necessarily the case, at least with this band.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm sorry about
my
that.
word, I couldn't reduce it down to one word. Mine was better take out a loan.
You're in the same space, the same mental space.
No doubt.
We didn't talk about the Oasis reunion.
Because I don't care.
I was going to say, because we could have 2 weeks ago, because that's not necessarily the newest news. And I was going to ask you how you felt about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny that like Jeff walked out, Jeff Salisbury. We saw them a week before they broke up. So they were on the last leg of their North American tour when everything went south, and they happened to be here in D.C. That might have been their last North American show, if I remember right. And every stereotype about the show at the time that I heard was that they're a very flat band to watch. They don't move. They, Liam Gallagher just kind of stands there with his hands behind his back. and he just kind of belts out what he needs to belt out, and they walk off stage, and that's that. And nothing was truer. That was absolutely on point. It was one of the flattest acts. Do they have great songs? Sure, but I felt like you could probably stay at home and save the money and throw those recordings onto some type of listening device and just listen to the songs and probably watch something different visually and get a better visual effect than watching the live band. Not that everybody needs to be Alice Cooper,
Right.
but there needs to be, at least I appreciate some type of audience engagement. And that was really missing and disappointing about Oasis. But yeah, I'm not necessarily the biggest diehard Oasis fan, so I do like their music, but I don't love it. And so, I mean, that might be a point in all this also, like in terms of a would you rather, go to see it. But that's why I'm very surprised that they have so much intensity with this dynamic ticket pricing
Right.
and are able to charge so much for their tickets. But it gets back to me. I'm not buying into the dynamic ticket pricing concept, and I don't like it for the fans.
Not good.
Good for you, Ian Mackay, for keeping those tickets cheap and the punk rock, every punk rock sense of that. All right. Getting into another reunion. I guess not another reunion necessarily, but at least a new members into a great band. Linkin Park's addition of Emily Armstrong to the band is...
So the word I came up with, and it probably doesn't make too much sense, but is indifferent.
Okay.
Because
Okay, wow.
this kind of gets into, if we go back to Aerosmith and them announcing their retirement
Right.
because of Steven Tyler's, his voice issues.
Uh-huh.
I could never see if the rest of the band wanted to continue touring.
Uh-huh.
I think they could.
Yeah,
And
sure.
you could go find somebody.
Sure.
And, I think some people would think that's great.
Yeah.
But for me, I just can't see that. I would not like that.
Yeah.
And at first when Van Halen split,
Right.
I was very, very indifferent, I guess
Yeah.
I would say,
Yeah.
on Sammy Hagar, even
Yeah.
though I love Sammy Hagar as a, a singer and a musician.
You're picking a great
and,
example. It's a great example.
But, Van Halen continued to be great.
Yeah.
And David Lee Roth went out and did his own thing, and he was great.
Right.
So and I know that a lot of the back and forth that's going on is mostly coming from, is it Joshua? Chester Bennington.
Jamie.
Jamie.
Yes, Jamie Bennington. Yes.
Is not happy
Yes.
that the band is continuing on
Uh-huh.
after his dad's suicide.
Right.
But if the band has decided they want to continue, then I think that's well within their right to do that.
Right. Right.
And, much like, and again, like we talked about with Skid Row and Lizzie Hale joining that band,
Uh-huh.
it was great. I think she did a great job.
Right.
She was true to the songs, and she's a great performer. And I've seen a couple of clips, and I've seen it kind of both ways where people are like, oh, she's phenomenal.
Right.
It's different, right? Because it's not the same.
Right.
But, I think me personally, I would withhold judgment on her
Yeah.
as the vocalist in Linkin Park when they actually record something and put something new out.
Sure.
Because it's always going to sound different, just like it sounded different when Sammy Hagar was doing
Right.
original Van Halen tunes.
I think another good example of what you're saying is what happened with Creed and Alter Bridge.
Yep.
By replacing Scott Stapp with Miles Kennedy. They even took that change, so to heart that they changed the band name.
Right.
And they called themselves something completely different. A lot of times,
Yeah.
people are out watching Alter Bridge not realizing that they're watching 3/4 of Creed.
Well, and, in some cases, some of that's not necessarily we need to change it because it's
Yeah.
a different singer. We
Yeah,
need
yeah.
to change it because the singer's suing.
Yes.
of
course,
the
of
whole
course.
LA Guns, Queensryche, the
Yes.
stuff that's happened with that when
Great White.
bands have split. Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, it could be that, but yeah, and that's what other people have said, now they're just a great cover band now,
Uh-huh. Right.
but, I guess you could change the name and go a different route, but so I'm a little indifferent. I like Linkin Park. but I'd like to see how things go
Yeah.
with her, and particularly when they record some new material.
Sure. So I'm getting into personal politics yet again. I think it's like a common theme in these news stories, at least over the past week. And my word was conflicted, which sounds a lot like divided. I don't know if it's a synonym or not. Maybe you can consider it as considered or not. But I did go into basically like the reactions that I was seeing about Emily Armstrong specifically was her initial support of, oh my goodness, Danny Masterson. Of that 70s show, who was
Well, yeah.
convicted of sexual assaults.
Right.
And initially, that was a friend of Emily Armstrong's, and she was supportive of her friend that was going through this, as a crisis. But of course, the victims of that, which included some people from Mars Volta and others associated with Chester Bennington, didn't feel that way. So for personal reasons, they felt that she was not an appropriate replacement because of those actions. She's since come out and disassociated herself from Danny Masterson, but I'm not sure exactly the timing of that, if that happened,
Sure.
After the Linkin Park announcement. I feel like some of it happened before. Either way, though, that obviously caused that controversy where some people are deciding just to boycott this change and not go see the band.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I went with conflicted, but it's a tragic situation, right? Like, no matter how you bend that, and hopefully this turns into a more positive experience for everyone where, again, like in the Foo Fighters situation, you can focus on the music and the positivity and the power of the music to kind of bring everyone together
Right.
in situations like that. So that's the best case scenario. All right, so like I said, it was kind of dark there, but we're ending on such a strong, positive story.
Yeah. So John Bon Jovi's move to save a Nashville woman from jumping off of a bridge was blank.
He was so valiant on that one. I gave him a valiant cause on that one. Our friend from high school, Damon Schaefer, loves John Bon Jovi more than no other. I'm sure he was just like bouncing all over his house when he saw this news of John Bon being a great guy and like pulling away from a video shoot and seeing a woman in distress that other people could not talk off of the side of a bridge. He joins the conversation. There's great video of it.
Yep.
And you see him discussing, I guess whatever he discussed with that woman and that person for a while, and her climbing back over and getting a warm embrace from John Bon Jovi.
And so I went back and forth with two words.
Okay.
But I'll say initially my word is compassionate.
Oh, that's very sweet of you, Kevin.
Because, clearly he could sense that there was some issues there.
Yeah.
And showing compassion to talk her out of that situation and getting her to come off the ledge and back onto the actual bridge.
Uh-huh.
But the other word that I was mulling around is fortunate.
Yeah.
Because he is actually crisis intervention trained.
Yes.
I was reading in an article.
Uh-huh.
So for him and that video shoot to be going on there
Right.
at the same time
Sure.
that this woman was dealing with her issues
Right.
was fortunate for her.
She had the right angel in the right place
Correct.
at the right time.
Yep.
Did she plan that? Because she knew, like, he's trained, so maybe he'll come save me.
Never know.
Right. So I think especially with another documentaries, we're talking about the rock docs that we watch. Of course, the great Bon Jovi documentary that's again on Paramount Plus. At least
On
it was.
Hulu.
It's on Hulu. Okay, thank you. Yeah, like the trials and tribulations that he's going through with losing his voice in terms of another aging artist, underperforming vocally, in at least a comparison to what he used to do. It's got to be a great uplifting thing for him.
Yeah,
as also.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, congratulations, John.
All right.
All right.
That's our word and heard.
That's
and
a
word.
lot of news, man. We packed in a lot of rock talk in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and we got some great shows coming up, both here at the Salisbury Center as well as in the area. Mm-hmm. So as a reminder, tomorrow night, Daycare Swindlers are here
Yes.
with American Television,
Little punk rock.
NNLNT, and Rise Defy.
Love it.
So that's all tomorrow night. And then on Sunday, it's Metal Night
Yes.
with Walk the Plank, our friends in Age of Ruin.
Always.
Ana Mananita.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how you pronounce
I was going to
that.
say, nice job. It sounded good to me.
We'll go with it.
Uh-huh.
And then I believe The Commitments.
Okay.
So
All right.
some great.
Are you afraid of The Commitments?
I love that movie. I don't think it's the same commitment.
Right?
So
You think they know of that movie and those that
if they do, they don't know what kind of music that
the
band
little
played.
Mustang Sally coming out on that one?
Right. I don't think they'll be playing Mustang Sally. Or maybe they will.
Right.
And
right.
just thrash it out.
Right.
So, yep. All coming up. And then regionally, October 18th, Bret Michaels,
Yeah.
the Party Graw is coming back to Leesburg
Absolutely.
with Stephen Piercy.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be interesting because I know 40th anniversary of Out of the Cellar, like when we saw him at M3, he
Fantastic.
played it cover to cover.
Except
I
they-
don't think
they
he's going to be doing that
okay.
in this particular show.
He shifted round and round to the back though.
He did.
Did not play that as the third song.
That is true.
But that was slick though. I
And-
loved hearing that whole album.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then Gavin Evick Band is part of that. And then I mentioned it before, January 11th at the Maryland Theater in Hagerstown, Brad Divins, Shannon Larkin
Yes.
from Wrathchild America,
Yes.
Wrathchild and Godsmack. Shannon was in Godsmack.
Yep.
Along with Brian Forsyth and Bob Paré are doing a benefit show
Can't wait.
for a treatment organization.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
be great. They're doing all covers,
Yep.
some of their tunes,
Yep.
and some of their favorite bands. So that should be a fun, interesting evening.
Can't wait to get there.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, sir. All
Anything
right.
else?
I think that was it. I mean, we got a lot. We got a lot going on. So we actually ended in time for Smitty and the Sports Notebook to come in here and talk about all your, latest and greatest. There's a lot of bets going on. He's got a lot of news happening right now too.
That is true. It's a busy time for the bettors.
I know.
All right, yeah. So check out the other shows on the Wild Style Network: Notebook Wagering, Tribe Called Jess, and is it still Until They Kick Us Out?
Until they kick us out.